I've been an electrical engineer for over 4 decades. During graduate school, I became interested in the intersection between electronics and the human biological system, and I've had a fascination with it ever since. It looks like we're made out of physical matter, but what we're really, if you really get down to it, each individual atom is a field, a wave. And all of the electromagnetic spectrum is waves. First, when you have a new, theory or technology, it's absolutely ignored. Then it's ridiculed, and only when the people that have ridiculed it die does it finally become self-evident that it's a good technology. In the last few years, technology has progressed to the point where a lot of that science fiction about being able to have superpowers and have senses, ultraviolet, infrared, being able to hear like a dog. Those are senses that are easily within the realm of technology that we now have. It would look like a small bar of soap without the slippery feel on the outside. It gets slipped under the skin, between skin and muscle as a commonplace, on the back or under the chin. It really depends. It will just extend who you are, make you more of a cyborg.
Hey everyone, that's Renegade Science Podcast and your host, Marie-Émile Fuyer. In this podcast, I meet scientists and entrepreneurs that are developing groundbreaking technologies that do not fit in the box of traditional science. I talk to them about their work and areas of expertise and ask all the burning and stupid questions, the most important of which is, how do we build a great future powered by tech? Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and social media. My guest today is Mike Seiler. Mike is a startup veteran with decades of experience in marketing and electronic product development, including medical devices. We will be talking about abandoned electromedical technologies, tech that was promising but at some point forgotten. There is a full graveyard of fascinating ideas there, and we are going to explore it together. Could you please introduce yourself?
Okay. Hi, my name is Mike Seiler. I've been an electrical engineer for over 4 decades. During graduate school, I became interested in the intersection between electronics and the human biological system, and I've had a fascination with it ever since. And I've designed various devices which were not ever intended for mainstream acceptance, but mostly for experimental use, which do appear to have some health-related benefits. And like I said, the intersection between who we are as biological beings and electronic doodads, here's something I've been working on, has been a fascination, for many decades.
That sounds amazing. Thank you for being here. Yeah, I'm super happy to have you as a guest. And now I would like to ask you, what made you so interested in this interconnection, intersection of human and machine? Why?
My mom, probably at the time she would have been called a hypochondriac, which is another way of saying that the doctors can't really figure you out, and therefore it must be all in your head. I kind of inherited that, and until about 15 years ago, I was also a hypochondriac, and so I learned a whole lot about of how the body really works. And I say really works because it's interesting, the the education that you get from your regular MD here in the country, or is very strongly slanted by what I think is very powerful vested interests that are more interested in having you be a profit center than a healthy person.
That's actually spectacular, because I believe that there is no journey of a company and no journey of a founder that is not supported by his personal story. And with each episode of this podcast, I get more and more proofs that it's actually true. So, since you engage so much in like biology and electromedical devices, could you please explain to me how this idea of electro and energetic medicine actually plugs into human biology?
Yes. One thing I should also still mention is in graduate school, one of the reasons you go to graduate school is they give you the confidence that it's like, hey, you're able to train yourself and figure things out for yourself. So I've done a lot of that. And so when you get right down to it, if you take a look at the hierarchy of science, the hard science is physics. And above that is chemistry. And above that is actually biology, which really relies on chemistry. Now, when you really get into chemistry, what you find out that much of it has to do with exchange of atoms of their electrons. And my degree is as an electrical engineer, so that's solidly in my field. And actually, electrical engineering also has to do with the whole electromagnetic spectrum, and radio, microwaves, X-rays, gamma rays, everything is part of the electromagnetic spectrum. And so what really, as an electrical engineer, I'm always looking at is how it looks like we're made out of physical matter, but what we're really, if you really get down to it, each individual atom is a field, a wave, and all of the electromagnetic spectrum is waves. So from an electrical engineering perspective, it's all about energy and the interactions of fields and waves.
So it's more like on the side of physics, yeah, than on the side of chemistry.
Well, there's, like I said, it's a hierarchy, and so if you understand the physics and the chemistry, much of the biology becomes much easier to understand, and so my interest in biological aspects is because that biologically we're not above and separate from the physics and chemistry, and therefore the exchange of electrons. And so much of what my interest in electromedicine and such is because basically we are electronics exchange beings before we're even chemical exchange beings, which is a superset of that.
And this is very interesting to me personally, because I know that modern medicine is very much focused on drugs,
Yes.
which are essentially chemistry. So what do you think is the reason for that, and why electromedicine had such a strong disadvantage so far?
Yes. If you go back and study the history of modern medicine, it originally, I think it was John D. Rockefeller, it was the Rockefeller that he made huge amounts of money in oil. And the story goes, and I'm not quite sure it's quite that simple, but he was trying to find an outlet for some of the other chemicals that were in oil or other uses for oil. And so he came up with the idea of selling drugs, which at the time he wasn't even quite that clever, but in the meantime, the way that industry has evolved is it's repeat sales, and it's repeat sales of chemicals that are typically rather inexpensive to make, but can be sold for huge markups as long as you have patent protection. Which brings us into the disadvantage of electromedicine is you can't patent an electron. Yes, you can do various kinds of patents on the equipment, and there's some mighty fine equipment out there, CAT scanners and MRI machines and such, very expensive, and lots of rather expensive equipment. But at the end of the day, that's not the same profit. And, it's unfortunate, but, and I'm not dissing all of the capitalist system, but one of the well, that's because this is not pure capitalism, it's a captured capitalism. That's to say, in the United States at least, one of the issues is that it's a good old boys network of pharmaceutical executives and government regulators, constantly changing sides. So basically, what has happened is that because the pharmaceutical industry has such an incredibly high profit margin, basically they can afford to buy more government oversight on their terms. That's the key. Than technologies that might not have quite the same profitability.
Wow, we're talking revolution here.
Oh, goody.
Oh my gosh. So, and because of that, electromedical technologies were more or less abandoned. And when we were discussing the idea of this podcast, so you proposed a list of 10 abandoned technologies. We won't be able to cover all of them in this podcast, so we will publish a full list so everyone who is interested will be able to know more. And each technology in the list has a scam rating from 1 to 10. And first we will talk about like more scammy tech and then switch to legit stuff rated by Mike Seiler. So we have a first one, which is a Kirlian photography with scam rating of 7 out of 10.
Right.
So I will give a very short overview first. So the Kirlian photography is named after Soviet scientist Semyon Kirlian, who in 1939 discovered that if an object on a photographic plate is connected to a high voltage source, a special kind of image is produced. And some people even now believe that these images represent the aura or energy field of living beings. So, and that's why Kirlian photography has been a subject of scientific research in parapsychology or art. So what do you think about this technology and why is it so scammy?
Yeah, I've actually built some of these devices, this Kirlian photography devices, so I can speak from experience. There's two scammy parts to it. One of them is that trying to associate the picture and I don't know if you can put in a picture afterwards.
I will.
Okay, yeah. In the pictures you see these little lightning tendrils coming out from objects, and there's the scammy part is that people read way too much into that, using that for diagnosing in ways that it's no more relevant than reading tea leaves or anything else in that category.
But what is that? What do we see in these images?
Well, what you see is the way Kirlian photography works is you have two plates, and they have a very large charge difference between them. And so if you put something that is moist between the plates, the electricity will then kind of arc out of it, trying to find the best way to get between plates. And if you happen to put a piece of photographic paper there as well, those little lightning bolts basically will be registered on it. And it looks very pretty, but that's about the extent and use of it. Is it makes for pretty pictures, and that's where I would prefer it be left.
Okay, very good. So we don't believe this one, but the next one has a scam rating of 1 out of 10. Ultraviolet blood irradiation, which treats many diseases. Actually, I checked the docs, and I see that like cardiovascular and infections and autoimmune and neurological diseases, and with a scam rating 1 out of 10. So if I understand correct, this is when ultraviolet light is added to the bloodstream, yeah, and there are some health benefits that emerge from that.
Yes, right. And again, I can talk somewhat from personal experience. I'll get to that in a moment. Yes, that's it. You basically take the blood out of an artery, put it in a bag, put a ultraviolet light on the bag, and then you put it back in. It's kind of like a dialysis kind of thing, I hadn't really realized how effective that was until I did some more research fairly recently. And in the United States, I asked, and I'm here in Colorado and Boulder, Colorado, and if any place is pretty advanced with alternative and progressive medicine, it's Boulder, and can't get that therapy around here. There do seem to be a few places in the United States that you can get it. I understand it is more available in Germany and Russia than it is here. But once again, it's a issue in that it's a relatively inexpensive therapy, and for all the good it can do, it substitutes for a whole lot of more expensive therapies. Now, my personal interest in that is that, I talked about my hypochondria. I noticed that whenever I kept a good tan on my skin, that my hypochondria mostly went away. And I thought for a long time it was just a vitamin D. In fact, when I get a vitamin D test, I sometimes get a call. It's like, your vitamin D levels are way too high. And it's like, well, that's because I've been out in the sun. There's a mistaken belief that too high vitamin D levels are toxic, and that's a lot of it is kind of bad research, but that's another subject for another day. Anyway, I finally realized that I needed to get my ultraviolet light from the sun, which is a darn convenient source because that's what we evolved into. We evolved to be outside in the sun a whole lot. And as long as I got my my ultraviolet light, like I said, I felt a whole lot better. And vitamin D has a months-long half-life, but it seemed like I needed to get my ultraviolet light on a weekly basis, and I now suspect that inadvertently I was doing that ultraviolet technology without even knowing it, because although the blood is not outside my body, but pretty darn close to the surface of my skin right now. So that's why I think that is a very legit technology and has huge potential. And it's another case where I believe that a inexpensive, very effective technology, it has been displaced by more expensive and usually less effective technologies. And it's sad, but I see this pattern over and over again.
Yeah, it's sad to hear because, bathing in sunlight is one of the oldest proven therapies in medicine.
Yes.
Yeah, and in like 1940s, lots of physicians tested and proved it with hundreds of patients, yeah, who uh, did bathing in sunlight, yeah, and got improvement with various like conditions, also like sepsis and pneumonia,
Right.
yeah, and including viral pneumonia. So very, I would say, serious illnesses, and they still felt improvement after receiving this treatment. So yeah, so do you think that there is some hope for this technology now?
Uh, well, it's a very interesting question, because to me the question translates into, um, is there a what does it take, for the for the medical system to shift back from being one purely focused on profit and again more focused on the well-being of actual individuals. And that's a socioeconomic phenomena that, I'm sure that we could have a much, much longer podcast on than we have time for at the moment.
That's for sure. Yeah, and I mean, I see how they clash. Yeah, this economic perspective and the main goal, as it should be for medicine to treat the patients and make them healthier. And yeah, they do not complement each other, to be honest, as
Yeah.
it seems right now. Yeah. So let's go back to our abandoned tech, also with a low scam rating, 2 out of 10. So Royal Raymond Rife and his Rife machine. So Mr. Rife invented it in 1920s. The machine that produces very low energy waves, also known as radio frequency electromagnetic fields. And Rife believed that bacteria are behind many diseases, including cancer, and he claimed that his Rife frequency generator could spot and get rid of cancer by by tuning into electrical impulses. But then American Medical Association came into play and condemned his experiments. So, and in 1990s, Rife machines were again on the rise, and many clinics were using them, but at some point, several owners that promoted the machines were sued and even convicted of fraud. So tell me, why do you believe that Rife machines actually work, and what to do with studies that disprove it? Because I've read that there are several studies that say that like this is a bullshit. What to do with that?
Yes, it's actually quite fascinating. I suspect from everything I've researched that, Rife was onto something, but as you pointed out, he was harassed, and his equipment eventually destroyed. However, he had a technician by the name of John Crane. Now, John seems like that, he was more enterprising than ethical, in that, he ended up promoting equipment that did not fully embody what Rife discovered. Basically, what John ended up promoting was a sham equipment, and actually in the early '90s, I myself had designed under contract some of the equipment. And interestingly enough, I actually gave a presentation about the Rife technology in Berlin. There was a theater, and no good podcast is complete unless you mention Hitler. But Hitler had a theater that he used for screening his propaganda videos, and I gave I gave a presentation on that stage about the Rife technology.
Tell me more about that. How it happened?
Oh, it's such a crazy story. I don't think it's quite believable. But anyway, the short version is that I had there were a number of people in Germany that were interested in Rife equipment, and I was contacted to manufacture it, and so I had 20 units that I brought with me to Germany, and I never heard that much about it later, and again, I suspect is because, as much as I hate to admit it, I don't think my equipment did everything that at least Rife's equipment did, and at the time I was under the same delusion that what we were making was Rife's equipment, but basically, like I said, it was probably a knockoff of something that John Crane did. But in fact, I was just looking, even right now on Etsy, there's places where you can buy a variation of this device right here for not very much money to be Rife type of machines. I'm modifying this for Cybersenses, but we'll get to that. And so the scam is that that there's a myth that was created around Rife's equipment that the research has not been done to resurrect what his technology actually did. I suspect it was some much more intricate interplay with various parts of the electromagnetic spectrum than is used in the current line of equipment. So I don't recommend Rife equipment because it's not real Rife equipment.
Why do you think that it's not real?
Because I think the real Rife equipment, again, going back to ultraviolet light, if you study the literature carefully, he used a special type of tube, quartz tube called a helium argon tube, and the helium argon tube would flash at certain frequencies, and because it was quartz is an interesting type of glass because it lets ultraviolet light through, and neon argon. The neon argon also, I believe, had radiation in the ultraviolet spectrum. So there was, and there maybe have been also other radiation types. Because the way the tube was constructed, it also put out a small amount of X-ray, maybe. It put out some radio frequencies. So it put out a whole lot more electromagnetic energy than the devices that you can currently get.
Okay. So it's like a Bible. Yeah, somebody was doing something, and then there was a guy who was writing after, and we got something completely different.
Yes, it's incomplete historical accounting.
This is super intriguing, I would say. So that there was a technology that was actually lost, and we got some shadow of it that was not functioning in a right way. And from that, we made some conclusions that the original technology does not work.
That's right. Yes, that's a good summary.
Oh, okay. So, and I have a mysterious Mr. Ed McCabe and his oxygen therapy. Yeah. So, and which is, it looks like it is a reliable technology with only 1 out of 10 at our scam rating. And I tried to find some information about this guy, and I got too little. although he was known as Mr. Oxygen, in 1988, he published a book called Oxygen Therapies, and he sold over 250,000 copies without any marketing and through pure word of mouth, which amazes me as a marketer. So tell me something. Tell me the real story of Mr. Oxygen. What happened there?
Yeah, this is a very clear case of where a technology got buried. Um, again, I do have personal experience with it. In fact, I have a client from 25 years ago that I would make a machine that turned regular oxygen into ozone. Ozone, although you hear it often mentioned as in that too much of it is a bad thing, it's ozone and pollution and such, and there's air purifiers that put out ozone. You have to be careful that you don't breathe too much, and that is true in that that kind of ozone can damage the lungs and such. But what Ed McCabe did is he put ozone either by bubbling it through blood, like in kidney dialysis, or just people would actually take large syringes full of ozone and literally inject it in themselves. So what ozone appears to do is basically supercharge the immune system, and so it had the ability to be basically not just an antibiotic, but also antiviral, which makes sense because we actually do need oxygen, and ozone is a particularly reactive form of oxygen. We need oxygen, and the right amount in the right places, yes, but we need oxygen to absolutely survive. Otherwise, if you stop breathing, it doesn't take long before you realize how much you need your oxygen. What I had done is I built a machine that would take the ozone and just bubble it through a glass of water, and then you would drink the water and therefore absorb the ozone through the stomach lining, which was way more comfortable and convenient than injecting a needle into a vein, and somewhat even more bizarre things than that. Oh, insulation was another one, and that's how do I put that nicely? That's putting in oxygen, ozone through a orifice in the body that things usually come out of. So at the end of the day, so the device I created would create ozone, and people would actually repurpose that device for the Ed McCabe kind of things. So my ozone generator, which was designed for water uses, I found that people were repurposing it. And the call I got the other day from somebody that bought one is that he needed his fixed. So I know people are still using them that way, and that there's still a demand out there. But
that's for sure. Actually, I was thinking about the legit technologies, yeah, and I see like sunlight and oxygen. Yeah, so practically those are technologies that utilize something that is very like in a natural way needed, yeah, by our body to function. I don't know, maybe there is water or whatever nutrients that you also can use and that you can, like pimp a bit to improve the health, yeah, or I don't know, to improve the ability to regenerate health or whatever. So, do you see any similarities in this? I would say technologies built in fringes, yeah, and abandoned ones.
yeah,
Yeah.
the joke is always that First, when you have a new, theory or technology, it's absolutely ignored. Then it's ridiculed, and only when the people that have ridiculed it die does it finally become self-evident that it's a good technology. Unfortunately, human lifespans is kind of slow with the rate of technologies, but that's kind of where we are a lot of times. Is that another thing is that a lot of technologies, typically medical technologies, it takes 2 decades between really solid research and when it becomes mainstream with doctors. So, well, that's not quite a generation, but it takes a really long time, partly because, doctors are going to do however things they've been doing all along, and only slowly does it change. And the medical schools really are also owned by the pharmaceutical companies, and so the best technologies, in my opinion, is ones that doctors don't hear about, and because they didn't hear about it in medical school, well, it can't be real.
So there is a contradiction there. Yeah, there are some much more advanced potentially technologies, although they cannot be massively implemented because of whatever pharmaceutical companies or corporations that have a dent, a skin in the game. How can we overcome that?
Well, you and I, we met in Vitalia, and it's a special economic zone in Honduras where you have more choice about which regulatory environment you wish to accept and use for whatever activities, businesses and such. And so it is my hope that there will be special places around the world. And as an aside, you can go over the border into Mexico from here, but I've met some of those, and some of those facilities, medical facilities, are legit. Others are just outright scam. But anyway, it is my hope that in Vitalia that it will be a mecca for really well researched science and therapies that people might not be able to find elsewhere in the world.
I would agree with you, and here I would love to talk about the technology that you're working on, the Cybersenses. Yeah, and I love the name. It's super cool. It immediately evokes in my mind some images of superheroes. So the Cybersenses that give humans extra senses, extra capabilities. So what does it actually mean? Give me some examples.
I'll give you some examples in a moment, but I'm going to key off of the superhero thing. One thing that's really interesting and instructive is, at least in my lifetime, a lot of things that were science fiction, $6 Million Man, Star Trek, that kind of thing. Some of those technologies, these things used to be, science fiction.
Sci-fi.
Yeah, I grew up with gradually watching them become real, and so our imagination tends to be ahead of what technology can provide at any one time. But I find that what we wish for in our imagination in science fiction is really instructive about what we want and what might even be possible. Well, in the last few years, technology has progressed to the point where a lot of that science fiction about being able to have superpowers and have senses that ultraviolet, infrared, being able to hear like a dog, being able to smell carbon monoxide, which doesn't have any smell to it, or other noxious gases, even being able to sense quantified self, like what's going on in our bodies, which we don't have really the level of awareness of that I think would really benefit us. Being able to communicate with other people telepathically, even in a somewhat primitive sense, knowing which way is north, being able to know where people that you want that are important to you are relative to you in space. All of those are senses that are easily within the realm of the sense source that we now have and technology that we now have. One of the last puzzle pieces to making that real is being able to do the implants for non-medical reasons relatively inexpensively. And so part of the reason I was there in Vitalia is because I needed to talk to somebody and see, actually two people, see how those two puzzle pieces are coming along, and they're almost ready. And so, the ability to sense, know, and know more, that's, as a species, that's what we're always trying to do, and our whole perception of what reality is informed by what we can measure and sense. And our ability to measure through electronics has so dramatically increased in the last 100 years that it has, created a whole new world that, like I said, in some ways seems like science fiction. And that's just the way that, we humans, what we want is, we always want to know more and know it more conveniently. And so one of the things with Cybersenses is it's a particularly convenient way because it uses the sense of touch in order to communicate with the body. And the brain is very, it's called neuroplastic in that it will figure out what to do with the stimuli coming in and make sense out of it. And it's very good at doing exactly that. So, the brain, in reality, is just inside our skull, and everything it perceives is through our senses anyway. And so it's very adaptable at modifying its perception of the world based on the senses. And the sense of touch, I think, is underutilized as a way of getting information into our brain in the first place. And so Cybersenses take advantage of that. Now, it's kind of I think of it kind of as a cheap man's version of Elon Musk's Neuralink, which is, gosh, he's an absolute genius, but it is an incredibly complicated, convoluted technology, and really, it's going to be a while before it's ready for prime time. What I have envisioned is something that could be made available as soon as enough people decide that they want it, and there's enough money to make it happen.
So what is that? I know that it's an implant, but it's not that invasive as Neuralink. So how does it look like? What is that? Where do I put it to get some Cybersenses?
While I was preparing a presentation, I was talking with my co-founder about this, and he asked ChatGPT what such a device would look like. And it came up with all kinds of complicated things with gears and all that. I said, just ask it to draw something that looks like a small bar of soap. And then ChatGPT got it. And that's really what it is. It would look like a small bar of soap without the slippery feel on the outside, and specifically, it would have a special coating on it that would that the body would not attack it immunologically. And then, depending on the nature of the sense, and we're still working out all the details, but anyway, it gets slipped under the skin, between skin and muscle as a commonplace, on the back or under the chin. It really depends. those are things that we're still very much researching. I have seen examples of small computers and also credit cards that just slipped under the skin. Everybody's familiar with pets and having an RFID tag, just put under the skin with a needle. It's something that is intended to be on the surface of it. Not that invasive, but again, by communicating through the sense of touch, it'll give you additional information about your environment or yourself, as a matter of fact, that you didn't previously have. And through some combination of what the brain, and if there's some of these will have apps associated with them for various reasons, it will just extend who you are, make you more of a cyborg.
So, do I understand correctly, like the sense of touch, I will touch it or it will touch me, like it will create a sense of touching, it will touch me, like I said, knock, 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 there is something here.
Yes, correct. Yeah, the nervous system is basically just electrical circuits, and there's special electrical circuits. But I studied the nervous system in graduate school, and so it's very easy to have a electronic device just talk to the nerve endings that are associated with the sense of touch. There's a question about how close together you can put two different channels, if you wish, so that you figure them out to be distinct sensations. For example, we have lots of nerve endings on our fingertips, and by the way, what some people do is they put little magnets. And they can feel magnetic fields at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, on your back, there's very few nerve endings. So there's a limit to the number of different channels you can put in any given area. You can put, I've seen pictures of this. You can put a few dozen channels on a finger, but you might only be able to put a few dozen channels over the whole back because there's less nerve endings. So that's part of the research that's ongoing, is how many channels you can fit in, because after all, we do have a sense of touch for a reason, but it's, like I said, it's underutilized for what it was originally intended for, which is the likes of making sure that you don't have biting insects on you, the sense of touch will still be there wherever it is, but you will have additional sensations that feed into that sense of touch wherever the Cybersense is implanted.
Why the sense of touch? Because it's simpler to connect to?
I also considered you could also use hearing. Of course, it's somewhat difficult to connect to the optic nerve. Although I have tried using basically Cybersense technology and just putting electrodes on either side of my temple and closing my eyes, and I will see flashes of light. But that's not particularly interesting. And so the sense of touch is one that it's. From a computer science perspective, I tend to think of things in the form of how much communication can you get through the channel, so when I just evaluate what all these nerve endings, they go up through the spine into the brain. It's like, okay, where can I stuff more information in, and the sense of touch becomes an obvious channel to do that with.
Interesting. So which kind of Cybersense you personally would like to have?
I do a lot of outdoorsy things, and sometimes it is possible to get disoriented if it's in a heavy fog or a snowstorm or whatever. And so just being able to tell which way is north is actually really convenient. And by the way, it's not just me. I think that in the military, being in someplace strange and being in a chaotic situation, being intuitively able to tell which way you're facing, I think is incredibly valuable. And the thing is that, when you pick up your smartphone, you have to look at it, and you have to, your attention and all that huge amount of bandwidth that comes in through your eyes gets focused on this tiny little screen, and you can't perceive whatever else is going on at that point because you're looking at the screen. So, for example, being able to tell which way is north, just as part of, just like, it's just as comfortable and convenient as being able to smell something or whatever. I think that's really helpful. So that would be the first Cybersense that I would certainly implant. But I probably shouldn't go into that. But I was talking to somebody that I met at a restaurant, and I was explaining how you could have a sense that would detect just your motion, and specifically we're talking about how you might move your hips, and you could have some a Cybersense down there, and well, anyway, she immediately wanted my phone number. I'll leave that up to your imagination why that might be a good thing. But anyway, there's that kind of thing, and that actually doesn't even, well, okay, enough of that. Unless you want to go down that road.
Actually, I wonder now because you seem very knowledgeable in terms of all kinds of abandoned and not abandoned technology in terms of electromedical devices. So why did you choose this road of cybersenses, like the implants that you put under your skin? Because it seems like you tried everything.
There's I've been watching technology evolve for 4 decades now, and one of the things is that there's often an intersection between what people want and what technology is capable of providing and how much it's actually going to cost. And right now, Cybersenses is in that sweet spot where, like I said, science fiction forms in an odd way what people want, and that technology has just gotten inexpensive enough now, and the technology is available and it's become inexpensive now, and so it's still a little bit early, but you have to be if you're going to be providing something that's people will want a little bit down the road. So there's a certain element of skating to the puck where the puck's going to be, to use a hockey analogy. And so because I've been following technology for so long, my gut feel says now's the time to be working on this, because by the time it's ready for prime time, then it'll actually be available. And one of the interesting things, television was invented by 3 different people at about the same time. And it's like, okay, if I'm not doing it, somebody else will. And I clearly know I can do this. So I might as well.
That sounds exciting. And I wonder, 4 decades of observing how the technology in which you are actually an expert, evolves. How does it feel?
That's a really interesting question. It's a wild ride and a great time to be alive. Yeah, what you can do with technology now. If I had, told that to my teen self, I'd just be totally beside myself, waiting to be as old as I am, just so this technology is available. It is an amazing time to be alive with all the things that are now possible that were never before possible in human history.
I perfectly agree with you, and I think that you are a very legit person to claim that. And I want to ask you, cybersenses are definitely a fascinating technology, but for it to get the mass adoption, people should be psychologically ready to augment their bodies with these implants. So when, in your opinion, will it happen?
Um, one of the concepts in technology is something called a killer app. Now, I'm still early enough in doing the research. I don't know what the killer app might actually be. I hope there is one. Otherwise, it will take a while for it to be adopted. Um, my vision is that people will know where to find Vitalia, Prospera, on Oatan because it'll be on the map in about 5 years. That's what I'm hoping is that that this will be something that will definitely be making a buzz. In an ideal world, I'd like to say 2 years, but my experience having followed technologies, I tend to be a little bit on the early side, but you just never know exactly when the perfect sweet spot is. When certainly mass adoption is possible, you just have to be ready for it.
Do you think that like popular culture or trends can play some role in this mass adoption?
Yeah, I myself, I know you have some tattoos, but I grew up in a generation where that's still not particularly common, and so body enhancement modification, it's already happening. Getting a tattoo is not exactly the most comfortable thing, and you can just have a pretty picture to look at. With a Cybersense, you'd have a whole lot more, and I don't think it's going to be a whole lot less uncomfortable than just getting a tattoo.
Yeah, because I see that as an example, biohacking is becoming more and more popular. So people actually are ready to, I don't know, to swallow some nutrients or pills with unexpected
Oh yeah,
results and
I do the
effects.
nootropics and peptides and supplements. I mean, that's another long discussion we could have. So yeah, in fact, biohacking is a very essential part, and I was in a sense doing crude biohacking with the company I had 25 years ago, and I'm actually, as a side effect of the Cybersense, it turns out that the same circuits I'm working on right now have other biohacking applications that I don't want to get into at the moment, but yes, there's people are getting more and more comfortable with the whole idea that we can augment ourselves in various capacities.
I think that females are already augmenting themselves as much as possible, at least in terms of like making the lips, yeah,
Yeah,
or I don't know, the breast bigger and everything.
there
And
you go.
sometimes you even cannot recognize this particular uh, person afterwards. So, yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, hmm, you could have a Cybersense for stimulating nipples. No, now let's not go there.
Okay, so last question. How do you think the mass adoption of different cyber senses may change the very fabric of our society?
Wow. Well, one of the things that I hope actually happens is that cybersenses will evolve to the point where it can become a form of telepathy, and that's almost a side effect of the fact that I can easily envision that we want to be able to go, hey CIA, can you tell me touch, so that nobody else knows that you're having a conversation with, with ChatGPT or whatever your AI of the day of the choice happens to be. But if you're going to be talking to an AI, basically telepathically, why not with other people? So my hope is in the long run, it will actually allow us not just to communicate with AI in certain ways are smarter than us, but just with other people, know how they're feeling, what they're thinking, even if we're, not right next to them. And so I think it actually, because again, it's the sense of touch. And one of the ways that the social beings that we communicate with others is through a sense of touch. I even thought about, having a special touch suit that you could feel somebody hug you, remotely and stuff like that. So my hope is that it has a sense, it has the ability to let us communicate with others in ways that weren't previously possible.
Yeah, that sounds like a great future. Yeah, that we deserve right now. Thank you so much for this conversation. That was really enlightening and very exciting. I enjoyed it a lot.
As you can tell by my enthusiasm, this is something that I enjoy talking about, and I hope that our conversation here helps it all become more real sooner.
Definitely, and I will also need to get myself such a beautiful background.
Yeah, we can talk about that after you stop recording, I suppose.
Okay, I put stop recording. Thanks everyone for joining. Bye bye.
Bye.